Good afternoon. Shelomo v'racha. Thank you everyone for coming out. I don't know if you noticed, but I'm not from Brooklyn originally. Don't know what gave it away. I'm actually from England. And about a month ago there was a celebration, a very, very big celebration in England, which I had to watch. Because once you're from England, it's just part of who you are. It was the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, which means that she's been on the throne for 70 years. And there was a massive celebration, epic, all over. They gave a 3 or 4 day weekend off from work. There were concerts and music, and I'll be honest, I had to watch. I have nostalgia for this stuff. I'm actually, B'ezras Hashem, going to London with my family for the first time in many years. And we're going to visit the Queen's Palace. I want to show my kids the stateroom, and my kids were watching me, watching this celebration of the Queen. And she's there on the balcony, waving to millions of people. And my kids are like, what are you doing? Why are you watching this old Safta waving to all these people? I'm like, Safta? That's the Queen! The Queen of England, Malchut! You get to see real majesty. What do we have here in America? The Kardashians. Okay, maybe. But we have real Malchut. Who would not want to watch this? And I was there. I was getting emotional. They're flying the planes over. And she schlepped along with a pocketbook in her hand, you know. Friends, it was such an amazing experience for me to see this. 70 years of the Queen on the throne. And they interviewed various people. And they did an interview with Harry and Meghan. I had to watch this because I am on Team Queen. And they, as you may have known, because you watch this stuff, you're American, dropped out of the family. And they spoke to Prince Harry and Meghan, and they said, tell me, what's your relationship like with your grandmother, the Queen? Imagine that. Your grandmother, the Queen. And Harry responded, what would you say? What's your relationship with your grandmother? I don't know. She loves me. She feeds me all the time, day and night. After an entire meal, she says, I look thin, eat more. That's everyone's relationship. Put a coat on, but it's 80 degrees outside. I said put a coat on, you're going to die of frostbite. Makes no difference. That's what I was expecting Prince Harry to say. He didn't say that. Do you know what he said? It's actually very sad. He said, I don't see her as my grandmother. I always saw her as my boss. That's what he said. You can see it online. She's not my grandmother. She's my boss. How terrible. How sad is that? Imagine that relationship. No wonder he went off the derech. He went OTD. So would I. Maybe that's our problem too. Maybe our problem is we see Hashem as our boss and not as our Avinu Shebashamayim, our Avinu Malkeinu, as our Father and our King. If we want to keep our children, ourselves, in the family, in the mishpacha, Prince Harry and Meghan taught us something, that you've got to create a familial relationship between you and Hashem. It's not okay to see Hashem as the boss, just throwing commands on us. And the many children, young men and women, actually not so young anymore. Someone in my house who's in his 40s says he has a trouble relating to Hashem. He's a frum guy, married with kids, a good guy. He says, I have a blockage in my relationship to Hashem because when I grew up, my parents, the Holocaust survivors, they would shout, they would say, go to Minyan, you have to wear a hat at the table when you say Birkat Hamazon. And to wake me up, they used to throw ice water in my face. How do you expect? Maybe those generations it worked, but it ain't working today, friends. It's not working today. It's got to come from a place of love and ahava. There's a very unusual mitzvah which we speak about, but not too much about because we have no reason to know why it's done, is the para aduma, the red heifer, the red calf. Everyone's always obsessed. We're trying to find a red calf. Oh, we found a red calf in Lakewood. Oh, Oh, we've had another one. No black hairs, completely red. Didn't work it. Everyone's looking for the red cow. Anything. Me, I look at it, I'm like, that'll make a great kebab. Sorry. But that's what they're looking at. Right? I'm like, oh, shishlik. Put the paraduma on the mangal, you're going to have a great weekend. No, every Jew suddenly obsessed with finding the red cow. Well, I think every kid knows. The truth is, we have no idea about this mitzvah. Even Shlomo HaMelech, the wisest of all people, turned around and said, to me, I wanted to be wise. However, Rachokim Emeni, it was far from me. And the Midrash says, what was far from Shlomo HaMelech? He knew everything. He knew the language of the animals. He could understand the language of the birds, and the Bilam couldn't understand his donkey. Shlomo HaMelech would have understood it. He knew exactly what he was saying. But he says, Rachokim Emeni. He says, I wanted to be wise, but this was far. What was he talking about? Paraduma. It's the ultimate chok, the ultimate statute that we do not know the reasons for. And yet, Rashi says, I'll tell you the reason for the paraduma. I got a reason. The reason is because the paraduma is the cow that we bring as a korban to clean the mess of the original cow of the Chet HaEgel. Shelomo, you're confused? Go read Rashi. Little problem, live 2,000 years after you. But besides that, go look in Rashi. He gave you the reason. What? Rashi knows the reason, and Shlomo HaMelech doesn't know the reason? What is going on over here, my friends? What is the secret to the paraduma? What was Shlomo HaMelech telling us in Kohelet? And what is Rashi telling us on the parasha? And the answer is going to teach us a lot, because we know that one of the 5 calamities that happened today, Shivas B'Tammuz, actually yesterday, it's a nidche of Shivas B'Tammuz, was that the Moshe Rabbeinu brought the luchot. Why did he break the luchot? Because he saw the Chet HaEgel. The Chet HaEgel happened today. So we know the solution to the breaking of the luchot is related through common sense to the Chet HaEgel, the sin of the golden calf. And we know that happened today. So if we can figure out the para aduma, we can figure out exactly how to fix today's problem. You get the equation, right? It makes sense. The only problem is, we don't know the reason for the para aduma. It's a chok. So we're stuck. And here Rashi says, oh, you got it. So what exactly is the answer, my friends? And the answer is going to have to be that when it comes to Emunah, Emunah pshita, simple Emunah, that's going to be the solution to your problems. Shlomo HaMelech was smart, really smart. However, even he said, this, no idea. This is beyond me. Does that mean Shlomo HaMelech turned around and said, well, I don't know the reason, no paraduma for me? He didn't say that. Rashi's saying that is the solution. The solution is, you don't know. Keep it simple. Kiss. Keep it simple, stupid. That's what they say. Emunah, we live in a generation, my friends, listen very carefully. We live in a generation where there's so much information. We're bombarded with it. Everyone knows every answer. You want to know anything? Used to be in the old days, you want to know anything? You just didn't know the answer. I don't know, is Bill Cosby still alive? You used to fight for 2 hours over it. No one had the answer. Now you Google it. Everything you want to know, it's just there in front of you. We think we know everything. But Emunah is teaching us that you don't know everything. The Paradum is teaching us that to have Emunah is to keep it simple. Something our grandparents, we're so much smarter than our grandparents. What do they know? They didn't have the internet. They didn't know Rashi. What do they? They sat and read Tehillim. They cried in front of the Nerot. They're so primitive. They knew so much more than us because they had an emunah that was peshuta. Like Moshe Rabbeinu. It says that his yadav emunah. When they were fighting Amalek, he held his hands above him. How did they win the battle against Amalek? He held his hands up. The Ne'eman, they were faithful to him. That's all it says. Did he fight? Did he scream? Did he shout? No. Just put his hands up. That's it. I don't know. And that's okay. I want to share just 2 beautiful stories Both are written down by the Chachamim. One involves a story from the Ben Ish Chai, and he mentions this in Sefer Matot. And it's really on this theme we're talking about, of it's okay not to know everything, because Hashem just wants simple emunah. And I believe that's the solution to our generation. He tells a story of a simple man who went to Bet Knesset. And he barely understands the Hebrew like most Jews today. And he barely wants to be there, but he hears the singing. And the singing speaks to him. And he hears the Chazan, says the Ben Ish Chai, sing out the words, Elu ve'elu nisrafin bevet hadeshen. Which means, this korban and this korban was burnt and placed in the makom, the place of the ashes. And he hears these words like, oh, so beautiful. What a beautiful singing. Doesn't know what the heck the guy's talking about. But he hears, this one is burnt. Elu ve'elu nisrafin. And they're placed in the Bet HaDeshen. And he says, I want to give that bracha to my children. So he goes home. Friday night, he brings his kids to the table, puts his hands on his son's head, and then his daughter said, Elu ve'elu, just like the Chazan he heard, Nisrafin, this one and this one should be burnt, B'Bet HaDeshen, and put with the ashes, Baruch Hashem, Yishtabach Shmolad, and they go and sit down. And the kids are no wiser than their father, says the Ben Ish Chai, and they eat the meal. Next Friday night, I must do it again. You know, it reminds me, by the way, I do many chuppot. I've done 150 weddings, Baruch Hashem, b'li anara. And I read the Ketubbah, and I try to put a little bit of oomph into it, right? And really, what is the Ketubbah? It's basically like a mortgage document, most boring document ever. And some lady comes out, she goes to me, Rabbi, what a lovely reading of the Ketubbah. I'm like, if you know what it said in it, honey, you would not say it's a beautiful thing, I tell you. Most depressing document ever written by mankind. Right? Elu ve'elu nisrafin. So every Friday night, this simple guy gets his kids up. Elu ve'elu nisrafin. This one should be burnt and put to the ashes. One Friday night, says the Ben Ish Chai, he brings to his house a big Talmid Chacham. He's sitting there. He sees the boy and girl come over. He sees the guy put his hands on the kids' heads. He's like, oh my God, this guy's insane. He stands up and says, what are you doing? You're cursing your children. He's like, but the Chazan sang it so beautifully. He says, you're telling your children. He says, don't ever do that again. And he sat down. So he didn't. That night, this Talmid Chacham went home. And he had a dream. And in a dream, an angel came to him, he says, and the Ben Ish Chai writes this down, and said he did a tremendous Aveirah. Hashem was rearranging those letters that simple Jew was making into words of bracha, and you ruined it all. You better go home, and you better return to that man and tell him to keep making that same bracha. Elu ve'elu nisrafin, says the Ben Ish Chai, that was the greatest bracha that this malach had ever heard. It's a similar story. It's funny, but it's true. There was a Bet Knesset, and this story is brought down by the Sefer Hasidim, that a Kohen would go up to the Bima to do Birchat Kohanim onto the Duchan. And this guy, again, was a simple man. Same idea. And he put his hands on the head, out, to spread his hands out, to give the bracha to the people. And as you know, the Kohanim say Birchat Kohanim of Aaron HaKohen, V'yivarecha Hashem v'yishmarecha. Instead of saying v'yishmarecha, this guy would always say v'yishmadecha. The resh looks like a daled. V'yishmarecha means you should be protected. V'yishmadecha means shmadach. You should be destroyed. And he gets up there every time and he's telling me, v'yishmarecha Hashem v'yishmadecha. And the Chacham of the Bet Knesset is getting really upset. You're trying to destroy my community. Were you crazy? And he goes up to this Kohen and says, it's not Yishmadecha, it's Yishmarecha. No problem. Okay, Rabbi, okay. Next day, same thing. V'yivrech Hashem v'yishmadecha. 2-3 days. The rabbi says, enough. He goes up to him after the bed. He goes privately, he says, you're not allowed to do Birchat Kohanim ever again. Please do not get up. Just walk outside. You bring klala to my community. Same thing. Rabbi goes home. He has a chalom. And in his dream, it says Gabriel, someone approached him. I don't know who it was. Approached him and says to him, what are you doing? This man's bracha came from his heart. He wanted to give bracha to the people and you're stopping him? You think Hashem can't change a dalet to a resh? You think that's how weak Hashem is? This Emunah Peshutav, this man, means more than all the Kohanim in history. That's the dream. Sefer Chassidim brings out a real story. And he went and he apologized to the man, he put him up there again. And every time he went to Birchat Kohanim, Yishmadecha. A great bracha. Emunah Peshutah. This is what we're dealing with, my friends. This is a solution to all our problems. Everyone's too clever for their own good. Keep it simple. Simple Ahavat Hashem. But we laughed at our grandparents for who didn't know anything. Who read Tehillim probably, I don't know, upside down. Who knows what they were doing? And yet, their tefillah were makabel, they were accepted. There's a beautiful story I just read about a rabbi called Rabbi Eliyahu Shamni. If you heard this before, I apologize. He and his wife were married for 20 years, no kids. 20 years, no kids. They went to adopt a child. Wanted to adopt a child. Happened somewhere in Eretz Yisrael. They went to the agency, and there was a lot of forms you got to fill out. You can imagine, adopt a child. One of the questions that was written on this form was, please list 5 things that you love the most. So Eliyahu Shamni, a good Sephardi rabbi, I assume. Number 1, I love Hashem. What's he going to write? 5 things you love the most. I love Hashem. And he put another 4. The woman, I don't know if she's a religious woman, sees this and she doesn't like it. And she's like, we take this very seriously. What you put down over here shows us whether you're going to love your children more than these 5 things. Do you hold by this? And he says, nothing I ever do, no one I ever meet, even a child, I'm going to love more than Hashem. That's just the emet. They rejected him and his wife. Rabbi Shamni was rejected from adopting a child. Very upset. 20 years, they can't even adopt. They went home. 9 months later, after 20 years of marriage, his wife gave birth to twins. Twins. Someone spoke to me, he was interviewed about this. It was a very story in his community. And he answered, he said some beautiful words. He said, when I was rejected, I was very, very upset. But I put my faith in the one, and I got 2. That's what he said. Something special. Something special. Chet Egel, sin of the golden calf. What was it about? Emunah Peshutah. The people saw that Moshe Rabbeinu did not come down. Instead of, they didn't reject Hashem. People mistake the story. This wasn't a rejection of Hashem. This was a replacement for Moshe Rabbeinu. That's what they were looking for. But they had a replacement. He was there. Aaron HaKohen. He was the Kohen Gadol. He was the rabbi. He was everything in Mitzrayim. They knew who he was. Why did they just turn around to Aaron HaKohen and say, okay, Moshe's gone, you take over? That's what they were lacking. That's what was missing. Why didn't they just do that? What did they do instead? They went to Aaron, and instead of saying, will you lead us? They complained and said, now we're going to tell you what to do. Make an egel. And so we had to push him off for a day in order to not to make a big rebellion. You see the change? The change was, don't you tell us what to do. We're going to tell you. That is the basic mistake of lacking emunah. Don't tell me, I'll tell you. Emunah is, I'm listening to you, Hashem. I don't know the reasons. I don't understand why. But in the end, I need Emunah. I need to come through this. You know the big difference between the women who did not sin today. You realize that? The women did not sin in Shivas Tammuz. They did not worship the golden calf. The men did. How did they worship the golden calf? We know they were dancing. They danced and they danced. But the women also danced. But where did they dance, say Chazal? Where did they dance? At the Yam Suf. So we have two dancings. The dancing of the women of the Yam Suf saved them from the dancing of the men at the time of the Chet Egel. And the Leviim also did not get involved. They didn't dance. We know that that's how they became the Kohanim and Leviim. Because they didn't dance either. Because they dance in the Mishkan with song and music. What's the solution, my friends, to the Chet Egel? Happiness, joy, simcha, and emunah. For ourselves, for our family. If you see your safta, you see a grandmother as the boss, if that's how you see Hashem as the boss, and there's no simcha, Chet Egel. Para Aduma is simple, pashut, emunah. And that's why the Midrash tells us that in the schut of the Para Aduma, we will bring the Geula. It's weird, right? Looking for a red cow? That's the solution. That's not what they're saying. They're saying that the solution to bring the Geula is not to overthink everything, but to have simple emunah in our tefillah, in our questions. Having emunah will bring us Geula. That's what we're going to have to do. Just talk to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, not as a boss, which we may have taken from our childhood, but as our Avinu, Shabashamayim, our Avinu Malkeinu, and Bezrat Hashem, we will see the redemption, and this will be our last Shivas Tammuz, leading to Tisha B'Av, God willing. Thank you.
Just want to apologize before I begin. I have my notes on my phone. I couldn't print them before this talk. So if you see me grabbing my phone, I'm not answering any messages. I'm not ignoring you. I'm just trying to remember some ideas that I may have forgotten along the way. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Today's